Get your stolen ticket off here. The gate agent's voice cracked like thunder through Gate 27 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Those tickets are fake, and I'm calling the police right now. 11-year-old Maya Williams froze, her small hand gripping her big sister Zara's sleeve. Zara was 13, barely a teenager, and her eyes went wide with fear as senior gate agent Patricia Hendricks stormed toward them, her face twisted with rage. "Ma'am, our daddy bought these tickets." Maya's voice came out small, almost a whisper. "We're going to visit our grandma in Miami." "Your daddy?" Patricia let out a cruel laugh that made people turn and stare. "Sure he did, sweetheart. And I'm the Queen of England." Around them, Terminal 3 buzzed with travelers rushing to catch flights, but everything seemed to slow down in that moment. Maya clutched her little purple backpack with the unicorn patch their mother had sewn on last week. Zara held their boarding passes so tight the paper crinkled. Patricia snatched the boarding passes from Zara's trembling hand. "First-class tickets? 2 little girls like you?" She looked at them the way someone might look at cockroaches. "Where'd you really get these?" "Steal them from someone's purse." "We didn't steal anything." Zara's voice cracked. She was trying to be brave, trying to protect her little sister, but her chin wobbled. "Don't you dare raise your voice at me." Patricia stepped closer, towering over them. The smell of her perfume was too strong, suffocating. "I know exactly what's going on here. Your kind always thinks you can get away with anything." Maya felt hot tears building behind her eyes. "Our kind? You heard me." Patricia's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Security! Get over here now." 2 officers appeared within seconds. Maya's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst right out of her chest. She'd seen things on the news, heard her parents talking late at night when they thought she was asleep, stories about people who looked like her getting hurt, getting arrested, getting worse. "Check their bags," Patricia ordered. "Everything. These tickets are fraudulent, I'm sure of it." "Ma'am, they're just kids," Officer Martinez said quietly. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Patricia's eyes flashed. "Do your job or lose it." Zara wrapped her arm around Maya, pulling her close. "It's okay," she whispered, but her voice shook. "Daddy will fix this." "Your daddy isn't here now, is he?" Patricia bent down to their level so that Maya could see the red veins in her eyes. What she whispered next made Maya's stomach turn inside out, words a grown woman should never say to children, words that cut deeper than any knife. Maya started crying then, and couldn't help it. Big, hiccuping sobs that made her whole body shake. Other passengers stared. Some looked away, embarrassed. A few pulled out phones, recording. Nobody stepped forward to help. The security officers started going through their bags. Maya's favorite stuffed elephant tumbled onto the dirty airport floor. Zara's diary with all her private thoughts. Their clothes. Everything was scattered like garbage while Patricia stood there watching with her arms crossed, satisfaction written all over her face. "Found something." Officer Martinez held up a small box. Maya's breath caught. "That's my birthday necklace. Mommy gave it to me last month." Patricia grabbed it, popping open the box. Inside was a delicate gold chain with a tiny heart pendant. "This is real gold. Expensive. Too expensive for her." She stopped, but everyone knew what she meant. "Where'd you steal this from?" "I didn't steal it." Maya was crying so hard now she could barely speak. "It's mine. It has my name engraved on it. Look." But Patricia didn't look. She snapped the box shut and pulled out her radio. "This is Gate 27. I need Chicago PD here immediately. 2 suspected juveniles with stolen property and fraudulent tickets." "Please," Zara begged, and hearing her confident, smart, brave big sister beg made something break inside Maya. "Please just call our father. His number's on our emergency contact cards. Please." "I'm not calling anyone." Patricia's voice went cold as ice. "You 2 are going to learn a lesson today about trying to be something you're not." Then it happened so fast. Patricia reached out and grabbed Maya's arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Maya cried out in pain. Zara lunged forward to protect her little sister, and Patricia shoved her. Zara fell backward, her head cracking against the edge of a seat. The sound echoed through the gate area. Zara lay there, dazed, blood trickling from a cut above her eyebrow. Maya screamed, a sound so full of terror and anguish that it seemed to pierce through every conversation, every announcement, every noise in that entire terminal. Officer Martinez moved forward, finally, his face horrified. Other passengers gasped. Phones everywhere now, all pointed at them, recording two little black girls being brutalized by an airline employee in front of hundreds of witnesses. And Patricia Hendricks just stood there, breathing hard, her uniform perfectly pressed, her face showing no remorse whatsoever. Maya dropped to her knees beside her sister, her hands shaking as she touched Zara's face. Zara? Zara, please wake up. Please. Zara's eyes fluttered open. Call Daddy, she whispered. Maya, call Daddy now. But their phones were in Patricia's hands now, confiscated, out of reach. What Patricia Hendricks didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she stood there in her position of power, was that within minutes, her entire existence was about to be erased. Now listen, if you think racism is something we should just ignore, if you believe children deserve to be treated this way because of the color of their skin, then go ahead and click away right now. But if you know in your heart that what just happened to Maya and Zara is the kind of evil we need to stand against, if you understand that silence in the face of injustice makes you part of the problem, then you need to stay until the very end of this story. Because what's about to happen next will restore your faith that sometimes, just sometimes, the monsters actually face consequences. Hit that like button if you're against racism, share this so the world can see, and subscribe to Hyper Racism channel because the reckoning is coming, and you won't believe who their father really is. Maya's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she watched blood drip from Zara's eyebrow onto the stained airport carpet. Around them, the chaos swelled like a wave about to crash. Voices overlapped, sharp and urgent. Someone was shouting about calling an ambulance. Another person yelled about lawsuits. Patricia Hendricks stood frozen now, her face pale as fresh snow, as if reality had just slapped her awake. Officer Martinez knelt beside Zara, his radio already at his mouth. We need medical assistance at Gate 27, Terminal 3. Injured minor. Head wound. Don't touch her. Maya screamed, throwing her small body between the officer and her sister. Her voice cracked with a fear so raw it made grown men flinch. You already hurt her. Stay away. The gate area had transformed into something between a crime scene and a media circus. At least 30 phones pointed at them now, recording every second, every tear, every drop of blood. This footage would be on social media within minutes, spreading like wildfire across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. But Maya didn't know that. All she knew was that her sister was bleeding and nobody would let her call for help. Sweetie, I'm trying to help, Martinez said softly, but Maya wasn't listening. Where are our phones? Maya's eyes, red and swollen from crying, fixed on Patricia with pure fury. Give them back right now. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confidence that had radiated from her just minutes ago had evaporated, replaced by something that looked almost like panic. She glanced at the cameras, at the crowd, at the blood on Zara's face, and seemed to realize for the first time that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I was just doing my job, Patricia stammered. They were acting suspicious, and I had to. You assaulted a child. A woman's voice cut through the noise. She stepped forward from the crowd, her business suit crisp, her expression disgusted. I saw the whole thing. You pushed that girl for no reason. That's not what happened, Patricia said, but her voice had lost its edge. She was being aggressive, and I had to defend myself. She's 13 years old, another passenger shouted. What kind of threat could she possibly be? The crowd turned on Patricia like wolves sensing weakness. More voices joined in, angry and accusing. Some people had already started tweeting, posting, and sharing. The hashtags were already forming in the digital ether, justice demanding its moment. But Maya barely registered any of it. She held Zara's hand, squeezing tight, watching her sister's eyes struggle to focus. Zara had always been the strong one, the brave one, the one who checked under Maya's bed for monsters and promised everything would be okay. Now she looked small and fragile and hurt, and Maya felt something inside her harden into steel. "We need to call our father," Zara whispered again, her voice weak. "Maya, this is important. We need Daddy right now." Their father, Marcus Williams. Even through her terror, Maya felt a flicker of something else. Relief, maybe. Or certainty. Because when Daddy found out what happened, when he learned that someone had hurt his babies, had called them names, had made them bleed on an airport floor like they were nothing. The paramedics arrived with a stretcher and medical bags, their movements efficient and practiced. They eased Zara onto the stretcher despite Maya's protests, checking her pupils, asking questions about nausea and dizziness. The cut above Zara's eyebrow wasn't deep, they said, but head injuries were tricky. They needed to take her to get checked out properly, make sure there was no concussion. "I'm going with her," Maya announced, climbing onto the stretcher beside her sister. "Sweetie, you can't," one of the paramedics started. "I'm going with her." Maya's voice could have shattered glass. "You can't separate us. You can't." The paramedics exchanged glances, then nodded. They'd seen enough trauma for one day. They weren't about to add to it by tearing two scared little girls apart. As they wheeled Zara toward the terminal exit, Patricia finally found her voice again. "Wait, they can't just leave. There's still the matter of the tickets, the jewelry, the investigation." "Ma'am," Officer Martinez cut her off, his tone sharp now. "I suggest you stop talking. Right now. You're already in enough trouble." Patricia's face flushed red. "Trouble? I was doing my job. I was protecting this airline from what?" Martinez stepped closer to her, his voice dropping low. "From two little girls trying to visit their grandmother? Is that the threat you were protecting us from?" In the ambulance, Maya finally got her phone back from a different airport security officer who'd retrieved it from Patricia's pocket. Her hands shook as she unlocked it, as she scrolled to the contact labeled with a simple heart emoji. "Daddy." She pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then a deep voice, warm and familiar, answered. "Maya Bear? Shouldn't you girls be in the air by now?" Maya opened her mouth to speak, but all that came out was a sob. A huge, body-shaking sob that she'd been holding back for the last 20 minutes. "Maya?" Her father's voice changed instantly, going sharp with alarm. "Baby girl, what's wrong? Where's your sister?" "Daddy," Maya choked out. "Daddy, they hurt us. They hurt Zara. She's bleeding and we're in an ambulance, and the lady at the gate said we stole our tickets and she said terrible things and she pushed Zara and—" "Slow down, baby. Take a breath." But underneath his calm tone, Maya could hear something else. Something cold and deadly. "Tell Daddy exactly what happened. Every single detail." So Maya did. Through tears and gasps for air, she told him everything. About Patricia Hendricks and her accusations. About being called thieves and worse. About their bags dumped on the floor like trash. About the shove, the fall, the blood. About how nobody helped them, how nobody stopped it, how they'd been treated like criminals instead of children. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long Maya thought the call had dropped. "Daddy." "I'm here, baby." His voice was different now. Controlled. Precise. The voice he used in boardrooms when he was about to destroy someone's career. "Tell me exactly where you are. Which hospital are they taking you to?" "Northwestern Memorial," the paramedic said. "Good. I'm 20 minutes away. Maya, listen to me very carefully. You and Zara are going to be fine. I promise you that. But the people who did this to you." He paused, and Maya could almost see his face, the way his jaw tightened when he was angry. "They're going to wish they'd never been born. Daddy, the lady who hurt us, her name was Patricia Hendricks. She works for American Airlines." Another pause. Then, American Airlines. Gate 27. Patricia Hendricks. "Got it. Daddy, are you going to—" "I'll see you in 20 minutes, Maya Bear. Keep your sister calm. Everything's about to be okay." He hung up. Maya looked at Zara, who was watching her with eyes that seemed clearer now, more focused. "Did you tell him?" "I told him everything." A small smile crossed Zara's face despite the blood and pain. "Patricia Hendricks has no idea what's coming, Does she? No, Maya whispered. She really doesn't. Because what Patricia Hendricks didn't know, what none of those people at Gate 27 realized as they went back to checking their phones and sipping their overpriced airport coffee, was that Marcus Williams wasn't just any father. He wasn't just another angry parent who'd make some noise and then fade away. Marcus Williams was the CEO of 𝐒𝐿 Global Holdings, the parent company that owned American Airlines. And in exactly 18 minutes, he was going to walk through those hospital doors, kiss his daughters' foreheads, and then systematically dismantle every single person who'd participated in their nightmare. The reckoning was coming, and it was going to be biblical. Marcus Williams' black Mercedes SUV cut through Chicago traffic like a shark through water. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Beside him, his phone buzzed incessantly with calls, texts, and notifications. He ignored all of it. The only thing that mattered right now was getting to his daughters. 18 minutes. That's what he'd promised Maya. He was going to make it in 15. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Maya sat in a plastic chair that was too big for her, watching nurses fuss over Zara in the emergency room bay. They'd cleaned the blood from her sister's face, applied butterfly bandages to the cut above her eyebrow. Zara would be fine, they said. No concussion. Just some bruising and the cut that would heal in a week or two. But Maya knew some wounds didn't show up on X-rays or CT scans. Sweetie, we need to call your parents, a nurse named Jennifer said gently, crouching down to Maya's eye level. She had kind eyes, the color of honey. Do you have a number we can reach them at? Our daddy's already coming, Maya said quietly. He'll be here soon. What about your mother? She's in London for work. She's a surgeon. She does a speaking thing there. Jennifer nodded, making notes on her tablet. And your father, what's his name? We need it for our records. Marcus Williams. Jennifer typed it in, not recognizing the name, not understanding its weight. Why would she? To her, he was just another worried parent rushing to the hospital because his kids got hurt. She had no idea that Marcus Williams' name appeared on the Forbes list every year. His decisions affected thousands of employees across 3 continents. That his signature on a piece of paper could make or break entire careers. Back at O'Hare Airport, Patricia Hendricks sat in the American Airlines employee break room, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. Across from her, Gerald Thompson, the terminal supervisor, had his reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing the incident report she'd hastily typed up. So let me get this straight, Gerald said slowly. You suspected 2 minors of having fraudulent tickets because they were acting suspiciously. Patricia's voice rose defensively. You weren't there, Gerald. You didn't see how they were behaving. How exactly were they behaving? Patricia opened her mouth, then closed it. How did you explain a feeling? That instinct that told you something was wrong? They just seemed out of place. 2 young girls with first-class tickets to Miami? It didn't add up. Did you scan their tickets? Silence. Patricia, did you scan their boarding passes through the system? I was going to, but you decided to accuse them of theft first? Gerald removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. Do you have any idea how many videos are circulating right now? Twitter is exploding. I've got corporate calling me every 5 minutes demanding answers. It was a judgment call, Patricia said stubbornly. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know when something isn't right. Gerald's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. What? He turned his phone around, showing her a Twitter thread that already had 50,000 retweets. The video was crystal clear. Patricia's face was perfectly visible as she shoved Zara. The audio captured every word, every accusation, every slur. The comments underneath were vicious, calling for her termination, for her arrest, for justice. That's taken out of context, Patricia protested weakly. You can't see what happened before? There are 7 different videos from 7 different angles, Patricia. They all show the same thing. You are assaulting a child. Patricia's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splattering brown liquid across the break room table. It wasn't assault. She was being aggressive, and I had to defend myself. She's 13 years old and weighs maybe 90 pounds. Gerald stood up, and Patricia recognized the look on his face. She'd seen it before, directed at other employees who'd made career-ending mistakes. I'm suspending you effective immediately. Pending investigation. Security will escort you out. You can't do this. I have rights. I have a union. And those girls had rights too. Gerald's voice went cold. Rights you violated in front of hundreds of witnesses. Now get your things and go home. Don't come back until HR contacts you. Patricia wanted to argue, wanted to scream that this wasn't fair, that she was being made a scapegoat. But the look on Gerald's face told her it would be pointless. She grabbed her purse with shaking hands and walked out of the break room, past coworkers who suddenly found their shoes very interesting. By the time she reached the parking garage, her phone had 12 missed calls from unknown numbers, and her Facebook page had been found by the internet mob. The friend requests and messages poured in, none of them friendly. She sat in her Honda Civic, hands gripping the steering wheel, and for the first time felt a cold finger of real fear trace down her spine. What had she done? Marcus Williams burst through the emergency room doors exactly 14 minutes after hanging up with Maya. His 6'3" frame drew immediate attention, his tailored suit and polished shoes out of place among the hospital's fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. But it was his face that made people step back. The controlled fury radiating from him was palpable. "Daddy!" Maya launched herself at him, and Marcus caught her, holding her tight against his chest as she dissolved into fresh tears. "I've got you, baby girl. I've got you." His hands stroked her braids, the ones her mother had spent 2 hours perfecting yesterday. Over Maya's head, his eyes found Zara on the hospital bed, and his jaw tightened even more. "Are you okay, Z?" Zara nodded, but tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, Daddy. We tried to be good. We tried to show them our tickets and be polite like you and Mommy taught us, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept saying awful things, and then she pushed me and... You have nothing to be sorry for." Marcus set Maya down gently and moved to Zara's bedside, his large hand impossibly gentle as he examined the butterfly bandages above her eyebrow. His fingers trembled slightly. "You girls did everything right. Everything. This is not your fault. Do you understand me?" Both girls nodded, but Marcus could see the doubt in their eyes. That's what racism did. It made you question yourself, made you wonder if maybe you'd done something wrong, if maybe you deserved it somehow. He'd felt it himself countless times growing up in Detroit, the son of a janitor and a cafeteria worker. He'd worked his way through Michigan State, through Harvard Business School, climbing ladder after ladder until he'd reached heights his parents couldn't have imagined. And he'd promised himself that his daughters would never have to experience what he'd experienced. That their lives would be different, better, protected. He'd failed them today. "Mr. Williams?" Jennifer, the nurse, approached cautiously. "The doctor wants to keep Zara for observation for a few more hours, just to be safe. Head injuries can be tricky." Marcus nodded. "Whatever she needs." He turned back to his daughters. "I need to make a phone call. I'll be right outside that door where you can see me through the window." "Okay. Are you calling Mommy?" Maya asked. "Yes. And a few other people." He kissed both their foreheads. 5 minutes. "I promise." He stepped into the hallway, pulling out his phone. His first call was to his wife, Diane, currently giving a presentation at a medical conference in London. She answered on the first ring, and Marcus gave her the abbreviated version. He could hear her voice crack, could picture her face crumpling, and it took everything in him to keep his own voice steady. "I'm booking the next flight home," Diane said immediately. "I can be there in 10 hours. The girls are okay. Scared and hurt, but okay. I've got them." "Marcus." Diane's voice dropped low. "What are you going to do?" He was quiet for a moment, watching through the window as Maya climbed onto Zara's hospital bed, the two sisters holding each other. "What I should have done years ago. I'm going to remind people that actions have consequences." His second call was to James Chin, his chief legal counsel. "James, I need you to pull every piece of information we have on gate agent Patricia Hendricks. Employment history, performance reviews, and any complaints filed against her. Everything." Marcus, what's going on? She assaulted my daughters at O'Hare. Put Zara in the hospital. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, I'll have everything on your desk within the hour. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just get me what I need. His third call was to Rebecca Martinez, his executive vice president of operations. She picked up immediately. Mr. Williams? Rebecca, I need you to pull security footage from Gate 27, Terminal 3 at O'Hare. Everything from the last 2 hours. I also need a list of every employee who was present during the incident, and I need it done quietly. Of course. May I ask what this is regarding? Marcus's reflections stared back at him from the hospital window. His eyes looked like his father's did on the worst days, when the weight of providing for a family on a janitor's salary became too much. But his father had never had power. Marcus did. It's regarding, Marcus said softly, the beginning of some long overdue house cleaning. He hung up and made one final call. This one is to Christopher Wade, the CEO of American Airlines. Chris answered cheerfully. Marcus, to what do I owe the pleasure? Chris, we need to talk. In person. Now. The cheerfulness evaporated. What's wrong? 2 of your employees just assaulted my daughters at O'Hare Airport. One of them is in the emergency room right now. The line went so quiet that Marcus thought it had disconnected. Then, I'm on my way to the hospital. Which one? Northwestern Memorial. 20 minutes. Marcus pocketed his phone and returned to his daughter's room. Maya had fallen asleep curled against Zara, exhaustion finally claiming her. Zara looked up at her father with eyes that seemed too old for 13. Daddy, that lady. The one who hurt us. Is she going to get in trouble? Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed, taking Zara's small hand in his large one. Baby girl, I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning. Every word she said, every action she took. Can you do that for me? Zara nodded and began talking. As Marcus listened, his expression never changed. But inside, a cold calculation was taking place. He was mentally cataloging every violation, every witness, every piece of evidence. By the time Zara finished, Marcus had a clear picture of what had happened. And a clearer picture of what was about to happen next. Have you ever watched someone mistreat a child and wondered why nobody stepped in? Have you ever been in a position where you could have helped but didn't know what to do? Understanding why bystanders stay silent is part of understanding how discrimination thrives. Because in 20 minutes, Christopher Wade was going to walk through that door and hear about how his employees had terrorized 2 children. And Marcus was going to watch very carefully to see how the man responded. Whether he made excuses or owned the failure. Whether he protected his employees or protected what was right. Chris's reaction would determine whether this ended with just Patricia Hendricks losing her job, or whether Marcus burned the entire organizational structure to the ground and rebuilt it from scratch. And as Marcus sat there holding his daughter's hand, watching her try to be brave despite the bandage on her forehead and the fear in her eyes, he found himself hoping Chris would give him a reason. Just one reason to show American Airlines what happened when you hurt a father's children. Christopher Wade arrived in 19 minutes, not 20. Marcus watched through the hospital window as the CEO of American Airlines practically jogged through the parking lot, his tie loosened, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Chris had probably broken every speed limit between his Lake Forest mansion and Northwestern Memorial. But he should be worried. Marcus met him in the hallway outside the emergency room bay, away from where his daughters could hear. Chris extended his hand, but Marcus just stared at it until the other man slowly lowered it, understanding passing across his face. Marcus, I can't begin to tell you how sorry. Don't. Marcus's voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it ran a current of pure rage. Don't apologize yet. You don't even know what you're apologizing for. Chris swallowed hard. I got the basics from my operations team. Gate agent, 2 minors, an altercation. But I want to hear it from you. If. Marcus stepped closer, and Chris instinctively backed up. 7 videos are circulating on social media right now. Millions of views already. Every angle captured in perfect high definition. Your gate agent's face is crystal clear in all of them. So is the American Airlines logo on her uniform. So is my 13-year-old daughter bleeding on your terminal floor. Chris pulled out his phone with shaking hands, pulled up Twitter. Marcus watched his face change as he scrolled through the videos, the comments, the hashtags. American Airlines was trending, and not in a good way. The videos had been shared by celebrities, activists, and politicians. The damage was already catastrophic and spreading by the second. "Oh my God," Chris whispered. "Marcus, I had no idea it was this bad. I thought maybe there was a misunderstanding, some confusion with the tickets." There was no confusion with the tickets. Marcus pulled out his own phone, showing Chris the receipt. "I purchased them myself 3 days ago. First-class seats to Miami so my daughters could visit their grandmother for spring break. Confirmation number, credit card transaction, everything legitimate. But your employee, Patricia Hendricks, decided that 2 black girls couldn't possibly belong in first class. So she terrorized them instead." Chris looked like he might be sick. "Where are your daughters now?" "Through that door." Marcus pointed to the emergency room bay. "Zara's getting observed for a possible concussion. Maya's traumatized. Both of them will probably need therapy to process what your employee put them through. I want to apologize to them personally." "No." The word came out sharp as a blade. "You don't get anywhere near my daughters. Not yet. First, you're going to tell me exactly what you plan to do about this." Chris ran a hand through his hair, and Marcus noticed the other man's hands were trembling. "Patricia Hendricks will be terminated immediately. I'll personally ensure she never works in the airline industry again. The other employees who stood by and did nothing will be disciplined. We'll issue a public apology, offer compensation to your family." "Compensation?" Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can write a check and make this disappear? Chris, do you understand what happened today? Your employee didn't just violate company policy. She traumatized 2 children. She made them feel unsafe in their own skin. She confirmed every fear they've ever had about how the world sees them." "I know, and Do you know?" Marcus interrupted. "Do you really? Because I'm standing here wondering how Patricia Hendricks kept her job for 15 years. Wondering how many other people she's done this to. Wondering what kind of culture exists at American Airlines that made her think this behavior was acceptable." Chris's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, Marcus. We have diversity training, strict anti-discrimination policies. Policies don't mean anything if they're not enforced." Marcus pulled out his phone again, showing Chris a document his legal team had already sent over. Patricia Hendricks has had 17 complaints filed against her in the last 8 years. 17. All of them from passengers of color. All of them cited discriminatory behavior. And yet she's still employed. Still in a position of power. Still able to hurt people. The silence that followed was deafening. Chris stared at the document, his face ashen. "I didn't know about this." "You should have." Marcus's voice went dangerously soft. "That's your job, Chris. To know. To protect passengers. To create an environment where this kind of hatred can't thrive. And you failed." "You're right." Chris looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes. "You're absolutely right. There's been a systemic failure, and it's on me. I take full responsibility." "But, because taking responsibility is just the beginning." Marcus crossed his arms. "Here's what's going to happen. Patricia Hendricks will be terminated, along with every supervisor who ignored those 17 complaints. You will launch an independent investigation into discriminatory practices across all American Airlines hubs. You will implement new training programs developed by actual experts in racial equity, not some corporate consultant who gives the same generic presentation to everyone. And you will create a passenger advocacy board that includes people of color to review complaints and policies." Chris nodded slowly. "Done. Love it. Whatever you need." "I'm not finished." Marcus took a step closer. "You will also personally call every single passenger who filed a complaint against Patricia Hendricks and apologize. You will offer them compensation and assurance that their concerns are being taken seriously. And you will make a public statement taking ownership of this failure, not some carefully worded PR statement that says nothing. A real apology that acknowledges the harm done and commits to meaningful change." Marcus, some of those things are going to take time. Then you better get started. Marcus glanced back toward his daughter's room. Because Chris, I'm about to tell you something that's going to change the nature of this conversation. Chris frowned, confused. What do you mean? Marcus pulled out his phone one more time, pulling up a document. He handed the phone to Chris and watched the other man's face carefully. Chris's eyes scanned the screen. Marcus saw the exact moment understanding dawned, saw the way Chris's face went from confused to shocked to absolutely horrified. Chris's voice came out as barely a whisper. You're the majority shareholder of Skyward Global Holdings. 53%, to be exact. Marcus took his phone back. Which means I own the company that owns American Airlines. Which means, technically, I own American Airlines. Which means you work for me, Chris. The hallway seemed to tilt beneath Chris's feet. His mouth opened and closed several times before words finally came out. How did I not know this? How is this not public information? Because I prefer to operate through proxies and shell corporations. Keeps things cleaner. Less attention. Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational. I've been a silent partner for 6 years now, ever since Skyward Global acquired American Airlines. I've never interfered with operations, never pulled rank, never made my ownership known. I believed in letting qualified people do their jobs without micromanagement. Chris looked like he might pass out. Marcus, I swear I had no idea. I know you didn't. That was intentional. Marcus leaned against the wall, his posture deceptively casual. But Chris, here's the thing. My silence wasn't permission to run my company into the ground. It wasn't permission to tolerate racism and discrimination. It wasn't permission to ignore complaints and protect bad employees. I understand. I don't think you do. Marcus straightened up, and suddenly the casual posture was gone, replaced by something that made Chris instinctively step back. You see, when I bought into Skyward Global, when I orchestrated the acquisition of American Airlines, I did it because I believed in what airlines represent. The democratization of travel. The ability for anyone, regardless of background, to see the world. To connect with family across distances. To pursue opportunities in far-off places. He paused, his eyes hard as diamonds. My daughters were trying to visit their grandmother. That's all. A simple trip that should have been filled with excitement and joy. Instead, your employee made them feel like criminals. Made them bleed. Made them question their worth. Chris was openly crying now, tears streaming down his face. Marcus, please. Tell me what I can do to make this right. It's too late to make it right, Chris. Marcus's voice was gentle, almost, which somehow made it more terrifying. You can't undo what happened. You can't erase the trauma. The best you can do is ensure it never happens again. I will. I swear to you. Your swearing doesn't mean much to me right now. Marcus checked his watch. It's 3:47 p.m. By 5 p.m., I want Patricia Hendricks' termination paperwork completed. I want a list of every supervisor in her chain of command who had access to those complaint reports. I want the security footage from Gate 27 secured and backed up. I want a comprehensive audit started on discrimination complaints across the entire organization. Can you do that? Yes. Absolutely. Good. Marcus turned back toward the hospital room. Now leave. I need to be with my daughters. You and I will talk again tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. My office downtown, not yours. And Chris. Yes. Bring your resignation letter. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to accept it, but I want it in my hands. Understood. Chris's face crumbled, but he nodded. Understood. Marcus watched him walk away, shoulders slumped, pulling out his phone to start making the calls that would set a corporate earthquake in motion. Only when Chris disappeared around the corner did Marcus allow himself to take a deep breath, to let some of the rage seep out of his rigid posture. He returned to his daughter's room. Both were awake now, watching him with wide eyes. They'd heard everything through the thin walls. Smart girls. His smart, brave, beautiful girls who shouldn't have to be brave about things like this. Daddy, Maya said softly. You own American Airlines? Marcus sat down between their beds, taking each girl's hand. I own the company that owns American Airlines. It's complicated business stuff. Why didn't you ever tell us? Zara asked. Because I wanted you to grow up normal. Without pressure or expectations or people treating you differently because of what I do or what I own. He squeezed their hands gently. But that's over now. The whole world is about to know exactly who hurt Marcus Williams' daughters. And they're going to learn what happens when you mess with my family. What's going to happen to that lady? Maya's voice was small. The mean one. She's going to lose her job. And she's never going to hurt anyone else the way she hurt you. Good, Zara said fiercely. She deserves it. Marcus looked at his daughters, at the bandage on Zara's forehead, at the fear still lingering in Maya's eyes, and felt something dark settle in his chest. Patricia Hendricks losing her job wasn't enough. Chris Wade's apologies weren't enough. He was going to dismantle the entire system that had allowed this to happen. And he was going to do it in a way that sent a message to every airline, every corporation, every person who thought they could mistreat people without consequences. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. Marcus, you need to see this. CNN is about to break the story. They've identified you as the girl's father and connected you to Skyward Global. It's going national. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Let it go national. Let the whole world watch. Because in corporate boardrooms across America, executives were about to receive a masterclass in accountability. Patricia Hendricks thought she was just dealing with two powerless children. Chris Wade thought he could manage the crisis with apologies and terminations. They had no idea that Marcus Williams was about to turn their world upside down, and by the time he was finished, the entire airline industry would understand that discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was catastrophically expensive. The reckoning had only just begun. By 6 p.m., Patricia Hendricks' life had imploded. She sat in her living room in her modest Arlington Heights apartment, curtains drawn, phone buzzing non-stop with messages she was too afraid to read. The termination call had come at 4:30 p.m., swift and brutal. No severance package. No references. Just a cold voice from HR informing her that her 15 years of service meant nothing compared to what she'd done. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching herself become the most hated woman in America in real time. Her face was everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and every major network are running the footage on a loop. The headlines were vicious. Airline worker assaults black children. Racist attack at O'Hare caught on camera. CEO's daughters brutalized by American Airlines employee. And then came the revelation that destroyed whatever was left of her world. Marcus Williams wasn't just any father. He was a billionaire. The man who controlled the very airline she'd worked for. The man whose daughters she'd called thieves, whose children she'd terrorized, whose family she'd attacked without knowing she was signing her own death warrant. Patricia's hands shook as she poured herself a third glass of wine. This wasn't fair. She'd been doing her job, protecting the airline from fraud, maintaining security. How was she supposed to know those girls were telling the truth? How was she supposed to know their father was Marcus Williams? Her phone rang. Another unknown number. She'd stopped answering hours ago, but the voicemails kept coming. Reporters want statements. Activists demanding accountability. Anonymous callers were leaving threats that made her blood run cold. She threw the phone across the room, watched it bounce off the couch. This was all wrong. She was the victim here. She'd lost everything because of two lying little girls who probably planned this whole thing, who knew exactly what they were doing when they... Patricia stopped herself, took another gulp of wine. That kind of thinking had gotten her into this mess. But the anger wouldn't leave, bubbling up inside her like acid. Marcus Williams thought he could destroy her? Ruin her reputation, take away her livelihood, turn the whole world against her? She'd show him what real consequences looked like. Meanwhile, at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Marcus received a call from his head of security. Sir, we have a situation developing. Patricia Hendricks has been making concerning posts on a private Facebook group. Screenshots are circulating. She's threatening legal action, claiming defamation, saying she's the real victim. Marcus listened as his security chief read the posts aloud. With each word, his jaw tightened. Patricia was doubling down, claiming the videos were edited, that his daughters had provoked her, that this was all a setup orchestrated by a wealthy black man trying to play the race card for publicity. She's also posted your home address, the security chief continued, and photos of your daughters from their social media accounts. The posts are being shared in some pretty extremist groups. We're monitoring credible threats. Marcus looked at his sleeping daughters, Maya curled up in a hospital recliner, Zara finally resting peacefully in her bed. The doctors had cleared Zara to go home, but Marcus had decided they'd stay the night. Safer here, with security he'd already arranged, than at home, where their address was now public knowledge. Increase security at the house and my office, Marcus ordered. And James, get me everything we need for a restraining order against Patricia Hendricks. I want it filed first thing tomorrow morning. After hanging up, Marcus stepped into the hallway and pulled up Patricia's Facebook posts on his tablet. Reading them made his blood boil. She'd posted photos of his daughters with captions suggesting they were playing the race card and ruining an innocent woman's life. She'd shared their school name, their activities, details no stranger should have about children. This woman wasn't just unrepentant. She was escalating. His phone buzzed with another alert. CNN was breaking news. Patricia Hendricks breaks silence, claims she's the real victim. They were about to air an interview she'd apparently given to a local reporter, doubling down on her version of events. Marcus made a decision right there in that hospital hallway. He'd been planning to handle this quietly through proper channels, let the legal system and corporate accountability do their work. But Patricia Hendricks had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd targeted his children publicly, put them in danger, and refused to take responsibility. The gloves were coming off. He pulled up his contact list, scrolling to a name he hadn't called in years. David Morrison, investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune, is known for his scorched-earth exposés of corporate corruption and abuse of power. David, it's Marcus Williams. I have a story for you. Everything you need to know about Patricia Hendricks, American Airlines' systemic discrimination problem, and 17 ignored complaints. How fast can you publish? For you? 24 hours. Make it 12. I want this in the morning edition. Because if Patricia wanted to fight dirty, if she wanted to play victim while threatening his daughters, Marcus was about to show her what real power looked like. He wasn't just going to destroy her career. He was going to make sure her name became synonymous with everything wrong with racial discrimination in America. And somewhere in Arlington Heights, Patricia Hendricks poured another glass of wine, typed another angry post, and had absolutely no idea that the man she'd crossed was about to unleash something she couldn't survive. The Chicago Tribune hit doorsteps at 5:47 a.m. By 6:15 a.m., every major news outlet in the country had picked up the story. American Airlines' 15-year pattern of ignored discrimination. An investigation sprawled across the front page with Patricia Hendricks' employee photo right beside a timeline of 17 complaints, all meticulously documented, all deliberately buried by management. David Morrison had done exactly what Marcus knew he would. The article was devastating, surgical in its precision. It named names. It quoted from complaint reports that HR had marked as resolved without ever taking action. It included interviews with 7 passengers who'd filed complaints against Patricia over the years, their stories eerily similar to what happened to Maya and Zara. Black passengers questioned about ticket legitimacy. Hispanic families were separated and searched without cause. Asian travelers accused of smuggling. The pattern was undeniable, damning, impossible to spin. By 7:30 a.m., American Airlines stock had dropped 4%. By 8 a.m., when Christopher Wade walked into Marcus Williams' downtown office, it had dropped 7% and was in free fall. Marcus sat behind his desk, calm as still water, as Chris entered, looking like he hadn't slept. The CEO's resignation letter sat in a sealed envelope, clutched in his shaking hand. "Did you leak those complaint reports to the Tribune?" Chris asked, his voice hoarse. "I made available information that should have been public knowledge years ago." Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Chris sat, placing the envelope on the desk between them. "I brought what you asked for." Marcus didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled up his tablet, showing Chris the real-time stock ticker, the social media explosion, the calls for boycotts growing louder by the minute. Do you understand what you're looking at? The destruction of everything I've built. No. Marcus leaned forward. You're looking at the consequences. The destruction was already there. You just couldn't see it because it wasn't happening to people you cared about. Chris's face crumpled. What do you want from me, Marcus? I've terminated Patricia. I've launched the investigation. I've committed to every reform you demanded. What more can I do? You can watch. Marcus turned the tablet around, showing Chris a live news feed. Patricia Hendricks was on camera outside her apartment building, surrounded by reporters, screaming that she was the victim, that Marcus Williams had orchestrated everything, that this was a witch hunt against white employees. She looked unhinged, desperate, her hair uncombed, her eyes wild. Every word she spoke dug her grave deeper. She's making it worse, Chris whispered. She doesn't know how to stop. Marcus watched Patricia's meltdown with cold satisfaction. Because people like her never think they'll face real consequences. They've gotten away with it for so long, they can't imagine a world where they don't. His phone buzzed. A text from his security team. Chicago PD is en route to Hendricks' location. Multiple reports of threatening posts targeting the Williams family. Arrest warrant issued. Marcus showed Chris the message. It's over for her. Completely over. And Chris? It's over for anyone else in your organization who thinks discrimination is acceptable. Chris nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. I know. Good. Marcus finally picked up the resignation envelope, turned it over in his hands. I'm not accepting this. Not yet. Chris looked up shocked. What? You're going to stay on as CEO. You're going to implement every single reform I demanded. You're going to rebuild this airline's culture from the ground up. And you're going to do it knowing that I'm watching every move you make. Marcus's eyes were hard as steel. Because the easy thing would be accepting your resignation, bringing in someone new, and letting you fade away with a severance package. But I don't want it easy. I want accountability. I want you to fix what you broke. Outside Patricia Hendricks' apartment, police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Officers approached her door as cameras captured every moment. The reckoning had arrived, and there was nowhere left to run. Patricia Hendricks was arrested at 8:47 a.m. on charges of assault, child endangerment, and making terroristic threats. The footage of her being led away in handcuffs, still screaming about how this was all a setup, went viral within minutes. 20 million views in the first hour. The internet was merciless, turning her meltdown into memes, her face into a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked prejudice and entitlement. But the consequences rippled far beyond one woman's arrest. By noon, Christopher Wade stood before a packed press conference at American Airlines headquarters, cameras flashing like lightning strikes. His hands gripped the podium so tight his knuckles were white. I stand before you today to take full responsibility for a systemic failure that has existed within American Airlines for far too long, Chris began, his voice steady despite the tremor Marcus could see in his shoulders. Patricia Hendricks' actions were not an isolated incident. They were the result of a culture that allowed discrimination to flourish, that ignored complaints, and that protected bad actors at the expense of innocent passengers. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. I failed Marcus Williams' daughters. I failed every passenger who filed a complaint that we dismissed. I failed to create an environment where hate could not survive. That ends today. Chris announced the termination of 12 supervisors and managers who had access to Patricia's complaint history and did nothing. He announced mandatory anti-bias training for every employee, developed in partnership with civil rights organizations. He announced an independent oversight board with the power to investigate and discipline discriminatory behavior. He announced a $10 million fund for victims of discrimination to access counseling and legal support. But the announcement that made headlines was the last one. Effective immediately, American Airlines is establishing the Maya and Zara Williams Passenger Protection Initiative, a comprehensive program to ensure no child, no family, no person ever experiences what these two young girls endured in our terminals. At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Maya and Zara watched the press conference on Maya's iPad. Their mother, Diane, had arrived from London at 6 a.m. and now sat between them, one arm around each daughter. Marcus stood by the window, his phone buzzing with messages from CEOs across the country, all suddenly very interested in reviewing their own anti-discrimination policies. "Daddy, they named something after us," Maya said softly. Marcus turned, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he smiled. A real smile. "They did, baby girl. Because what happened to you mattered. Your voices mattered. And now every airline in this country is going to think twice before treating anyone the way you were treated." "Good," Zara said, touching the bandage on her forehead. "Nobody else should have to feel like we felt." The criminal charges against Patricia were just the beginning. By evening, 3 civil rights organizations had announced lawsuits against American Airlines. The Department of Transportation launched a formal investigation into discriminatory practices across the entire airline industry. Congress scheduled hearings. The NAACP called for a nationwide audit of airline complaint procedures. One woman's hatred had opened a door that couldn't be closed, exposing a rot that went deeper than anyone wanted to admit. Patricia Hendricks sat in a holding cell, her 15-year career gone, her reputation destroyed, her future a black hole of legal consequences and social exile. She'd lost everything in less than 24 hours. Her job, her freedom, her anonymity, her ability to ever work in aviation again. And in a hospital room across the city, 2 young girls who'd been made to feel less than human were being treated like the precious, valuable, worthy human beings they'd always been. Have you ever wondered what would happen if people in power actually faced consequences for discrimination? If complaints were taken seriously instead of being buried? If victims' voices actually mattered? Because what happened next would answer those questions in ways nobody expected, as Marcus Williams prepared to do something that would change corporate America forever. The justice served was sweet, but Marcus wasn't finished. Not even close. 3 days later, Maya and Zara sat in their father's home office, the late afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The bandage was gone from Zara's forehead now, leaving only a small pink line that the doctor said would fade completely in a few weeks. But Marcus knew some scars took longer to heal than others. "Daddy, why did that lady hate us so much?" Maya asked, curled up in the leather chair that dwarfed her small frame. "She didn't even know us." Marcus set down the report he'd been reading, giving his daughter his full attention. This was the conversation he'd been dreading and preparing for since the moment he'd gotten Maya's call from the ambulance. "She didn't hate you specifically, baby girl. She hated what you represented to her." He chose his words carefully, knowing they would shape how his daughters understood this experience for the rest of their lives. Some people are taught, either directly or through the world around them, that certain people are less valuable than others. That skin color determines worth. And when those beliefs go unchallenged for years, when people get away with acting on them without consequences, those beliefs become actions. And actions become violence. "But we didn't do anything wrong," Zara said, her voice small in a way that broke Marcus's heart. "You didn't. You did everything right. You were polite, you had your documents, and you tried to de-escalate. None of this was your fault." Marcus moved to sit on the edge of his desk, closer to them. And that's the insidious thing about racism. It doesn't care about your character, your achievements, or your kindness. It only sees the surface and makes judgments based on centuries of learned hatred. Diane entered the office, carrying hot chocolate for the girls. She'd barely left their side since returning from London, and Marcus could see the toll this had taken on her too. The guilt of not being there, the rage at what had happened, the fear of what could have been worse. "What your father is trying to say," Diane added, settling onto the arm of Maya's chair, "is that Patricia Hendricks' actions weren't about you. They were about her own prejudices, her own fears, her own moral failures. But here's what's important. The world saw what happened to you, and the world said no. Not acceptable. Never again." Marcus nodded. "Millions of people shared your story. They demanded accountability. They pushed for change. And now, because of what you went through, airlines across the country are rewriting their policies, retraining their staff, creating systems to protect other passengers from experiencing what you did. So something good came from something bad? Maya asked. Yes. But that doesn't make the bad thing okay. Marcus looked at both his daughters, these brave, resilient girls who'd handled this nightmare with more grace than most adults. You didn't ask to be symbols or activists or examples. You just wanted to visit Grandma. And the fact that a simple trip turned into a national conversation about racism tells you everything you need to know about how much work we still have to do. Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking. At school, when we learn about the civil rights movement, it always feels like something from a long time ago. Like racism was this thing that existed in the past, but doesn't anymore. But it does, doesn't it? It does, Marcus confirmed. It looks different now. It doesn't always wear white hoods or burn crosses. Sometimes it wears an airline uniform and speaks in professional tones while destroying people's dignity. It hides behind policies and procedures. It gets excused as just doing my job or following protocol. But the intent is the same. The harm is the same. What do we do about it? Maya asked. Besides telling our story? Marcus smiled, proud of the question. You live your lives fully and unapologetically. You excel in everything you do, not because you have to prove your worth to people like Patricia Hendricks, but because you deserve to reach your full potential. You speak up when you see injustice, even when it's uncomfortable. You support others who face discrimination. And you remember that silence in the face of hatred makes you complicit. And, Diane added, you remember that your father's money and power made consequences possible in your case. But thousands of people experience what you experienced without that protection. Without the ability to fight back. Without anyone believing them. So part of your responsibility now is to use your platform, your privilege, to amplify voices that aren't heard. The weight of that responsibility settled over the room like a blanket. Maya and Zara exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them the way it did with sisters who'd been through trauma together. We want to do something, Zara said finally. Not just let Daddy and the lawyers handle everything. We want to help. Marcus and Diane looked at each other. They'd been so focused on protecting their daughters, on shielding them from further harm, they hadn't considered that the girls might want to be part of the solution. What did you have in mind? Marcus asked. A video, Maya said. Talking about what happened. About how it felt. About what people should do if they see something like this happening to someone else. She looked at her father with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 11. Because there were so many people at that gate, Daddy. So many people with phones are recording. But nobody helped us until it was too late. Nobody stepped in when that lady was saying those awful things. Nobody protected us. The truth of that statement hung in the air. Hundreds of witnesses. Dozens of cameras. And not one person had intervened until Zara was bleeding. Bystander intervention, Diane said softly. Teaching people how to safely intervene when they witness discrimination. Exactly, Zara agreed. Because maybe if someone had said something earlier, had stood up for us, it never would have gotten so bad. Maybe Patricia would have realized people were watching, that they wouldn't accept her behavior. Maybe she would have stopped. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. His daughters weren't just victims. They were becoming advocates, voices for change, examples of resilience. They were taking their trauma and transforming it into purpose. Okay, he said. We'll make the video. We'll talk about bystander intervention, about speaking up, about not letting fear of confrontation allow evil to flourish. But we do it on your terms, at your pace. If it becomes too much, we stop. Deal? Deal, both girls said in unison. Over the next week, Marcus watched his daughters record and re-record their message until it was perfect. They talked about the fear they'd felt, the helplessness, the confusion of being treated like criminals when they'd done nothing wrong. But they also talked about hope, about the good that had come from the bad, about the responsibility everyone had to stand against injustice. The video went up on Marcus's social media accounts, carefully managed by his PR team. Within hours, it had 10 million views. Within 24 hours, 50 million. Celebrities shared it. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Airlines used it in training sessions. It became part of the national conversation about race, discrimination, and the power of ordinary people to create change. But more importantly, it sparked something Marcus hadn't anticipated. Stories started pouring in. Thousands of them. People sharing their own experiences with discrimination, their own moments of being targeted, their own trauma that had never been addressed. A black businessman was humiliated at a luxury hotel. A Latina woman was followed around a department store by security. An Asian family was denied service at a restaurant. A Muslim man was removed from a flight for speaking Arabic on his phone. The stories were endless, heartbreaking, and enraging. And they all had one thing in common: bystanders who'd watched and done nothing. Marcus realized then that his daughters had identified the real problem. It wasn't just the Patricia Hendricks of the world, the overt racists who acted on their hatred. It was the silent majority who witnessed injustice and looked away. Who pulled out their phones to record but never to help. Who told themselves it wasn't their business, wasn't their problem, wasn't their fight. We need to do more, Marcus told Christopher Wade in their weekly accountability meeting. The policy changes are good, but they're not enough. We need to change the culture. We need to make bystander intervention the norm, not the exception. Chris nodded, taking notes. In the weeks since the incident, he'd transformed from the defensive, excuse-making executive Marcus had confronted in the hospital to someone genuinely committed to change. Whether it was authentic or just fear of losing his job, Marcus didn't care as long as the results were real. What do you have in mind? Chris asked. A nationwide campaign. Not just at American Airlines, but across all skyward global properties. Hotels, rental cars, cruise lines, everywhere we do business. Training every employee not just to avoid discrimination themselves, but to actively intervene when they see it happening. Empowering them to speak up, to stop it, to protect victims. And making it clear that failing to intervene has consequences just as serious as being the perpetrator. Chris's pen moved rapidly across his notepad. That's ambitious. It'll cost millions to implement properly. Then we'll spend millions. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because the alternative costs more. In lawsuits, in damaged reputation, and in human suffering. And I refuse to run companies that profit off of people's pain. The campaign launched 2 months later, with Maya and Zara's faces as its centerpiece. See something. Say something. Do something became the slogan, a call to action that went beyond empty words to concrete steps people could take when witnessing discrimination. The response was overwhelming. Other corporations adopted similar programs. Schools implemented bystander intervention training. Communities organized workshops. The conversation Marcus's daughters had started rippled outward, creating waves of change that touched millions of lives. But late at night, when the press conferences were over and the headlines had moved on to other stories, Marcus would check on his daughters. He'd find them sleeping peacefully, their faces relaxed, their breathing steady. And he'd think about how close he'd come to losing them, not physically, but spiritually. How Patricia Hendricks' hatred could have broken something essential inside them, could have taught them that the world was a cruel place where their worth was determined by others' prejudices. Instead, they'd learned something different. That injustice could be fought. That silence could be broken. That even in the darkest moments, people could choose to stand for what was right. The lesson wasn't that everything happened for a reason or that good always came from bad. The lesson was simpler and more profound. That how you respond to injustice matters, that transformation is possible, and that change begins when someone decides enough is enough. Patricia Hendricks sat in her attorney's office, facing the reality of 3 felony charges and 17 civil lawsuits. Her life as she'd known it was over. And somewhere in Chicago, 2 young girls were teaching the world how to be better, how to do better, how to demand better. That was justice. Not perfect, not complete, but real. 6 months after that terrible day at Gate 27, Maya and Zara stood on stage at a civil rights conference in Atlanta, addressing an audience of 3,000 educators, activists, and corporate leaders. They spoke with confidence now, their voices steady, their message clear. They transformed their trauma into purpose, their pain into power. Marcus watched from the wings, Diane's hand in his. his daughters had become voices for change in ways he never imagined. They'd testified before Congress. They'd met with airline executives across the industry. They'd inspired legislation protecting passengers from discriminatory treatment. Patricia Hendricks had been sentenced to 18 months in prison, her mugshot a permanent reminder that actions have consequences. But more importantly, the systems that had protected her for 15 years had been dismantled, rebuilt, and reimagined. The journey from victims to advocates hadn't been easy. There were nightmares, therapy sessions, moments when the weight of it all felt too heavy for children to carry. But Maya and Zara had chosen to carry it anyway, to transform their suffering into something that might spare others the same pain. As Marcus listened to his daughters speak about the importance of standing up, speaking out, and refusing to accept injustice as normal, he realized something profound. Real change didn't happen in boardrooms or courtrooms alone. It happened when ordinary people decided they'd had enough, when bystanders became upstanders, when silence became intolerable. His daughters had sparked that change. And the fire they'd lit was still burning, spreading, illuminating dark corners where discrimination had thrived in shadows. That was the real victory. Not just justice for two girls, but a cultural shift that would protect countless others. Now it's your turn to answer honestly. Do you think racial discrimination and prejudice can truly end? What do you believe needs to be done to curb it in our communities, our workplaces, our everyday lives? Do you think serving justice to individual offenders is enough, or does the entire system need transformation? Tell us your opinion in the comments below because this conversation doesn't end here. And if you want racism to become a thing of the past in our country and world at large, if you want to be like Marcus, Maya, and Zara, educating others and passing awareness that creates real change, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can make sure stories like this lead to action, not just outrage. Together, we can build a world where no child has to experience what these girls endured. Hit that like button if you stand against discrimination, and let's continue this fight for justice, equality, and human dignity. Thank you for watching.